Alright, hey guys, wanted to talk to you today about region locking, just some thoughts on it. I have three things listed here. It's kind of whatever. I can't really limit it down because there's a lot of things to actually cover, so I made like a Reddit thing because it got me thinking about it because people keep making posts about should Korea be region locked? Should the Koreans not be allowed to play in the Pacific region because the Pacific region has a lot of Korean teams in it? Should Koreans not be allowed to play in China, NA? There's not actually a problem with them playing in EU, which is like a tiny bit strange, not super strange from Koreans like VPNing into Europe because they'd be on like 250 to 300 ping, and at that point you can't actually like outscale anyone because you're just going to be lagging so far behind. So that somewhat makes sense, but importing them even for teams like Hurricane, I guess Hurricane and Eagle both were teams that were like Eagle were a French team, and then Hurricane was trying to just import, I say import, but just have more UK players specifically. So, but for the other teams, I guess they just wanted to all stay European. And I guess there is so much talent, but I feel like there could be like a Korean here or there that could actually like go into Europe, but that just hasn't been the case. In trials, it's happened with the Samsung team, but regardless, so talk about local talent. It's kind of weird. It feels like people just assume that if you take a local player and just put them at the highest level, that they'll just automatically learn from that and get better. And like, it feels like if you just like replace all the Koreans, so if you take all the Koreans out of NA, which is actually a lot of them, I think there's 18 total or something like that, like Fusion and Toronto and I think there's one more team that would be like really effective. So they have like three, like two or three for each of them. So you'd basically have to like do like a fresh roster. Would the replacements would not be as skilled, number one, because to compete for those spots, it's not like they were just like, oh, this guy's Korean, let me just put him in the roster. The Koreans are really good on these teams, and there's a reason why they're playing. If you were to just take the local talent that was the level below, who didn't get into the teams because he wasn't good enough, and just plug them in there, it doesn't necessarily mean the team is going to just stay at that same level. A lot of the teams are probably going to drop off, and they're not going to be as skilled, and overall the league is not going to benefit as much just because that one player is now going to be just slotted in. Just because the spot now exists for him doesn't mean he's going to improve. The Korean player didn't just get slotted into this team because he's Korean. He proved himself that he was a skilled enough player, and usually there's actually a deficit that they have where if you're recruiting as someone for your team and you already have 5 North American players or 4 North American players, you're most likely going to want to pick up another one who speaks English fluently. Where some of these teams, they have to like weigh the differences. If we put this Korean in, our comms are going to be worse, so he needs to be this level above in skill, regardless to what his communication can be. So he needs to prove that he can be a better player than this guy can be, way more than the amount of communication that we'll get that from that guy will be. So I hate the idea that just local talent will just you just put local talent in and then they'll prove themselves eventually. And like the proving ground is trials. There isn't hardly any imports for trials. Like trials, open division, that's where you can prove yourself. That's where you can move up the ladder. In my case, whenever we had my old team No Cloud in trials, the thing that we proved ourselves was we're a bunch of North American players. We had a bunch of no names on there, and the way we proved ourselves was playing well, practicing, trying really hard. We got to practice against contenders teams all the time. We got to play at a level that we normally wouldn't have if it was just a bunch of like randoms put together, and the local talent had to get rallied by someone. That was me, and then we eventually got good scrims. We got into tournaments. We had good placings. We beat an academy team, the Optic Academy team, in quotation marks because they weren't technically that, but the whole roster got transferred over. But that team was all local talent, and we beat teams with Koreans on them, and we really proved ourselves playing locally. And I feel like taking an import has always just been like this like taboo thing where it's like you can't do that because you're like cheating the system, you're cheating your local talent or whatever. But if that local talent hasn't proven itself to be as skilled, then there's no reason to go with them because they haven't shown the motivation to get to that level, or they aren't developed there at that point. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is get denied and have to prove themselves. You don't just give free passes to everyone and expect them to then just prove themselves. The way you get people to improve is here's your opportunity. You fail, you're going to be motivated to like seek that after if you failed and you're trying to go for it again. Whereas if you're just handed it and like, oh yeah, you're kind of good, no imports, so you can just get this slot, then that person's not going to feel the motivation because they haven't really had to try as hard for it, so they don't value it as much. Where the Koreans, especially, there should be some respect, especially for the ones moving here. We talk about it all the time in like America's history, where it's like there's so much respect for all like the colonies being built and everything. Like they all came over, they had nothing with them. All these immigrants coming from everywhere in the world to the United States to like live the American dream and like have an opportunity. How is it any different from like these young Korean, some Chinese, whatever players coming over for whatever esports game? Even Europeans, there's a lot of Europeans who've come to the US as well and played in here and really shown themselves. It's like, I'm moving over, I'm committing to this system in the US, trying to live the American dream, trying to like have a better opportunity for myself because they can't go back home and get the same amount of work. And that's the same for esports, where they maybe don't have jobs for like a lot of like the lower end countries. So I'm thinking Middle Eastern, China, some of them like they just can't get as good work, so they have to move to a country where they can get work. It's a very similar thing for esports in Korea. There's so many Korean players that they're able to populate the Pacific League, China, North America, and all of Korea, and OWL, and still have talent like overflowing there. So there's a reason why they need to spread out, and giving them that opportunity to do that is like pretty important because we get better Overwatch. The players who are local now get to train against better players because the Koreans are coming over. They're bringing their skills, they're bringing their coaches, they're bringing their their experience with them, and other people are going to be able to learn from that. And then the tier below are also going to see this is what this guy was doing, rather than, oh, I'm just that guy who's now just given the spot. So I don't like that at all. I feel like you compete for it. If you're the better player, you get it. So the idea of limiting Koreans, it feels bad to me. It feels wrong. It feels somewhat racist in the way that people have like talked about it. So the whole point of limiting Koreans from playing, I don't like it at all. I think the whole thing of just having them play in Korea would be a travesty because NA, Pacific, they haven't proven themselves. If they can like import Koreans to their teams and they're better, then why should we just put North American players in because they're white, because they were born in the US? That just gives me a sour taste in my mouth. I don't like that at all. Where sure you want majority maybe North Americans in the league, and they are. Maybe in Pacific, it's already a mixed match of everything, and so I don't mind it as much that there's mixed teams and there's Korean teams coming in, there's Chinese. Is it Chinese? I'm thinking like Taiwanese, and then there's the Japanese team. Where else is there? There's a bunch of different teams there, but if they're not at that same level, then the league is going to suffer. So maybe you can have it be more local, but will it be a better league? Will it be as competitive? I don't know. The people at the lower level, will they be able to compete at that same level? Those be basically getting a paycheck because they were born there, and I don't like that. The other thing is limiting all the Koreans into just Korea. We would have the most stacked Korean league ever. Imagine Panker, Who Are You, Alarm, who else? Shu. I'm trying to think. All of the Lucky Future Zenith players, all the current Korean players. There was Hagapune, Tizzy, Huyal, Nene, Flower, all of those players back in Korea now. There would be so many stacked teams. The top 8 in Korea would be insane. That would definitely be like OWL caliber teams, besides the fact that they already have like 2, maybe 3 OWL caliber teams in the top of contenders. You would have the most stacked league in the world, which it's mostly been. Like, thinking of like League of Legends where everything's region locked, Korea is god tier, it's by far the best. Every other region can only import a certain amount of players. We see every other region get crushed every year. Korea, China dominate every single country. I'm trying to think what other games. StarCraft was another one. Korea dominated everyone. Korea then had that spread out of, it's basically just North American Koreans versus European Koreans versus Korean Koreans. So I don't like the idea of limiting it. We need to be able to like have an ecosystem where North American players can learn and I feel like just giving them the opportunities doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's build from the ground up. Let's allow high school leagues, college leagues, players to really learn and like be worked into that system earlier on. The only way we're going to be able to do that is work from the bottom end up. It's not, I don't like the whole top end down thing where it's like, let's just put players in the top and then trickle down from that. I feel like you build up from the bottom. There definitely is some developer support. There's each of the different Owl teams is also like giving their own system, so it is a bit top down where Owls teams have like their own local things. So like the most recent one I think is like Dallas has done like a local LAN for like college teams, and then they can come to an event. There was a Houston Outlaws event where it was like a 10K prize pool in Austin, yeah, where you could go to the event, bring your own team, play in that. It's a local tournament, but I feel like I think there's definitely ones for everything. There's every Owl team is doing them, but I think those can help, but it's also got to be the players got to help themselves. The players got to like work with each other. We're all spread out. It's not as centralized, so the people that are local with each other have to help each other out. We can't be exactly like Korea where a lot of the population lives in one city, and so they can all play with each other. They can all do LANs all the time. So it's got to be different for us, and we got to like work together, be on the ball together. Everyone's got to be working with one another. So it's got to be like everyone moves up rather than just some people get that opportunity because whatever. The last thing is like viewership. The thing is like it's an online league, so does having a Korean versus an American player make any difference at all? You don't know. If you're a very casual viewer, they are just watching Overwatch to watch Overwatch. It doesn't make a huge difference. You can't tell. You can't hear their comms. Maybe the contenders teams make content and then it's a little bit lessened because the Korean player can't talk as much English, but that's not been the thing for the majority of these contenders teams. I thought like they'd at least have like one content creator or something with them, making montages or things with them, or doing interviews and stuff. But it feels like these contenders teams have just been like farm teams where it's like some of them have a team house, but most of them are just let's just play Overwatch, let's grind Overwatch. There's not really been any content to make themselves more marketable for Owl teams, which I thought was actually going to be one of the big selling points for this, was going to be, hey, we have a very marketable player who's also very skilled. This is exactly what Owl wants, because once you get into Owl, you're going to have to make a bunch of content. You're going to have to play games. You're going to have to be a presence, and it's not just about being good at Overwatch anymore. So that's the thing I thought the West was going to like focus more so on, and that's what I think they should have been focusing on, but it seems like that's not the direction a lot of the contenders teams have gone. So the viewership thing I think is it doesn't really matter. Like contenders isn't about viewership, and unless like there's some more outside help from Blizzard, then it's not going to get any help because it doesn't get tweeted about. There's no posts about it. It basically just exists there. They have some prize pool. They threw money at it, but I mean it's not enough to help people. Like the only teams that have like really stayed afloat and had good consistent support staff have been the academy teams that have money to just drain out their bodies. All the other teams that have been paid, there's been so many different issues with them. All of them have had problems paying players, and so the money also from the leagues is also not enough to like live on. It's basically like minimum wage, so even if that, and it's not consistent, it's really back paid. Like you have to wait a while to get paid, so the whole system doesn't really work for just having it be region locked. I don't like the idea at all. It could be region locked, but I feel like all the leagues outside China and Korea would suffer, and the competition wouldn't be as strong, and I definitely just don't like it.